Okay, first off, are there any questions on what we did earlier? Making things move, adding keyframes. Everybody's got that. Okay, so I'm gonna camera front because the movement doesn't look very realistic at this point. Let's add a sphere and move it down here so it's 0. And let's pretend that the sphere is starting off at 250 meters up there. Based on our zoom, let's make it 500. Okay, so if we think about how things fall or move, we know that there's the sphere and it's going to, let's say, take a full second to come down here. So, and then it's going to bounce back up halfway, so it would take half as long. Keyframe takes just as long to come back down. Oops, there I go. Move the object first. It's coming back down. Now it's gonna half the time, so about 7 more frames. It's going to bounce a little bit higher. And 7 more frames. 7, 4. Okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you get the idea, right? Okay. It by default, what is happening as we look at it, see how it's rounding out? That's not really what happens. It should be almost at a standstill at the top, accelerating on the way down, rapid as it bounces back up, it decelerates, right? And so by default, what's happening in the program when we look at a keyframe, let's stop it for a minute so we can let them drive us crazy. When we look at a keyframe, the interpolation is spline, meaning it's just kind of figuring out what it wants to do. We can make that a linear, now it's a constant acceleration, or make it step so it holds flat and then immediately drops off. And so we don't want to do that. So right here is a little handle. As I stretch that out, do you see it flattening out at the top here? Let's grab this one. When we see 2 different handles, I'm going to break that handle, I hope. I want it to come in steep and then turn around and steep. And I'm using the shift key to break that. It's just like the Bezier tool. Break those handles on the curve, and let's see what we end up with now. See how it feels a little more natural as it's coming down? And so we want to take control of our acceleration or our interpolations as we go through, and we're going to do that when we look at the keyframe by these little handles. Now it's going to go way up and come way down right about there. Whee!
So you used to create those like pinches,
Handles.
the handles, yeah.
On the keyframe,
Yeah.
and that's where we start having to come in and look at our keyframes. This interpolation is spline, okay? And then I went in and I pulled the handles at each keyframe.
And by clicking shift, it keeps that line, but it's just dropping
It's,
down.
yeah, like Illustrator. Otherwise, the 2 handles are going to move together.
Yes.
And so in order to break those handles, we're going to hold the shift key to break the handles independently so we can get that V shape in our movement.
That's what I was looking for.
If you want to make it spin around in a circle.
Okay. I want to make it spin around in a circle. Let's take a look real quickly in a perspective view so we can kind of see what it's doing at the moment. And so I want to make it spin maybe on the horizon. Not that we can see a circle spinning that direction. That would be a rotation on the H. So I've got to, I don't want all these keyframes right there that have it locked in. So I'm going to just highlight them and delete them. And I'm going to tell it to rotate from position 0 to position 720, which is 2 full circles.
Okay.
Had I left those keyframes that I had done when I was just hitting the keyframe tool, it would have had a value of 0 there, a value of 0 there, a value of 0 there, and so
Because it was locked in.
it would have locked in. And so what I needed was on the horizon. Let me do it again on a different one. At the moment, if I were to change one of these keyframes to a value of 360, one circle there, it would, what we would get, because that, see how it did the 360, and then it goes back to 0 because we have these frames already locked in from hitting that little red button. And that's one reason why I don't use the red button any more than I have to. I don't want it locked in at 0. In fact, now I can just drag this out and have it. Yes? And so as it approaches scale on the Y, as it approaches this point, right as it starts to hit, I'm going to lock that value in. And then I'm going to let it scale down on the Y value a little bit, say to 0.8, as it squashes. And then as it accelerates, it's actually going to go up to like 1.1 and then move back. And so let's do it also at this point. Lock that in at 1. We said that goes down to 0.8. And then we're going to, it's not going to accelerate quite as fast right here. And I'm using the control key and clicking to add those keyframes, by the way. And so it's going to 1.05, so we get a little squash and stretch. Feels.
How'd you do the squash and stretch again?
I haven't stretched, I've just squashed so far. Okay, so I'm going to do the opposite here for the X and the Z. We're locked in there. Oh, that one should not be there, and that one should not be there. That's why it's doing funky. Okay. So right before it gets there, it's locked in at 1, right? Then it's going to, when it hits here, if I squashed on the Y, then it has to expand on the Z, X and Z, so I'm going to expand it to 1.1 here, not 11. And then as it comes up, it's going back to 0.8, or no, we had it do, I don't remember what value we used.
I think it was 0.8.
Okay, if it was 0.8 on the Y, then it's going to be 0.9 on the Z. So, and then it comes back to 0, and right here it's still at 0, and there it's not going to hit as hard. So that's going to become 0.95, and it's going to stretch up to 1.05-ish. That makes sense? Did you see how I just kept adding keyframes?
Yeah.
Control click.
Yeah. It's just the numbers that throw me off.
Yeah. Now, we could do math. Right? And so if we squashed something, we could do the true volume and figure out how much it has to really stretch. I cheat. I use a rough approximation. If it's squishing on the Y, I'm going to assume that it's going to expand half as much on the X and the Z. So if it squishes 0.2 on the Y, then it's going to expand 0.1 on the Y and the Z. That's not 100% correct, but it's close enough to fool the eyes and to get the effect.
I don't see where it's squashing.
I don't see where it's
When it
stretching
makes-
Okay, let me get rid of the rotation because it's. So let's stop it and move it slowly. It's accelerating. See, it's the Y is squishing down. I haven't done this, and it's stretching on the X right now. And then as it's going back up, it stretches just a little bit.
It's like a rubber ball when it hits the ground.
The bottom not being in
No, I need to go time it out a little better, but I'm just showing you how you can go in and customize keyframes. Okay?